Well, I think it's safe to say that the big talking point, the big news maker for 2022 is going to be inflation. If you look at the average monthly rental in South Africa, this is information from PayProp. It's currently at just under 7,800 Rand a month. The average petrol bill for two tanks, currently 2,500 Rand. So that's more than 10,000 Rand a month before things like food and insurance and debt repayments and electricity. And the average after-tax salary, according to Stats South Africa in the country, is 20,600 Rand. So something just doesn't add up here. I think consumers are under all kinds of pressure. And one man who's developed his business around alleviating some of that financial stress on consumers and employees in particular is Simon Ward, founder and CEO of Floatpays. And he joins us today. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
Now, before we talk about FloatPays and what really floats your boat when it comes to entrepreneurship, how did you get into the world of entrepreneurship? Is it something that's always been in the family, in your blood?
It's something which I saw firsthand when my father started his own business back when I was a 15-year-old and my dad was in his 50s here in South Africa, and he really wanted to make a difference and leave the corporate world. So that was kind of the beginnings of the journey for me, if you like. I then post studies at UCT, went overseas for a year. That became 16 and a half years. And I spent the majority of those 16 and a half years working in some extremely exciting startups, but scaled really from, 10, 15, 20 people into the hundreds and thousands with a few exits along the way. So for me, startup life has been in my blood for a very long time. It's something I get very excited about. Love building product, love disrupting existing markets.
And then probably moving on to the next thing, probably not a big fan of the processes and systems that come with medium to large scale businesses as they mature down that J curve. Now, FloatPays is an on-demand earned wage access company. Just can you tell us what does that entail, an on-demand earned wage access company?
Yeah, absolutely. So on-demand wage access, or sometimes also referred to as earned wage access, really is about giving access to your employees a tool which allows them to take a percentage of their earned income during the payroll cycle, whether that be weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And the importance of that is for those who are not financially included or have a bad credit score, it's to help them out in times of emergencies. So if you take a typical use case, you run out of money during the month, something happens which is unexpected, that's just life. You need taxi fare to get to work. How do you come up with the resources in order to do that? And so earned wage access is like your buddy, your safety net. We're there to give you a percentage of that earned income to help you out when you need it most.
It's like bridging finance for employees. Now, what inspired you to found FloatPays?
I think it was actually coming back to South Africa, having lived abroad for a number of years, worked in Europe, the States, Japan, India. And what I was noticing when I came back was that as a society, we still hadn't moved forward in terms of financial inclusion. And so more and more what I was seeing was the most vulnerable financially being taken advantage of. And so for me, it was about founding a business which would help with that financial inclusion piece. So our vision at FloatPays is all about financial inclusion for Africa's workers, which sounds like a very huge task, but it starts with small things. And earned wage access was a great way just to get us into a small business where we could grow and scale.
Yeah, where they're not falling into the hands of the machinistas who are then charging those usurious interest rates and then just setting them back into this vicious cycle.
And that's what we see, right? We see people borrow a little bit of money, not understanding what interest is, what compound interest is, the extortionate rates, as you point out, and being those financially most vulnerable. They lack that financial education, money management acumen in order to get through that pay cycle. And then they end up in a cycle of debt. And to get out of a cycle of debt, especially with the lack of that financial education, is super, super hard.
And I think, one of the big focus areas that you touch on is obviously financial stress, reducing the burden of financial stress as part of this broader aim of financial inclusion. And I reckon lots of employees are suffering some form of financial stress at the base of the pyramid in South Africa, where, the numbers that I mentioned in the beginning, one can only imagine what's going to happen when taxi fares start going up. I was chatting to the CEO of Transaction Capital. They service the taxi market. They haven't really passed on fares for a while now through the pandemic. So there are big increases that are coming on there. What impacts does financial stress have on an individual and obviously for the companies they work for? I'm sure you look at this quite closely.
We do indeed. So we've run a number of social impact studies, a few thought leadership pieces, just really trying to unpack, like, first of all, what are the reasons that people need earned wage access? Why are they reaching out to us for support? And if we look at that, clearly transport, as you articulate, in terms of the taxis, getting to work, getting back from work, is something which comes first and foremost to people's minds in terms of how they live their lives. And then if we look at further down the scale, things like where you buy your electricity, your airtime, your data, your medical expenses, obviously coming out of the pandemic of COVID. These are all important aspects of where people need support during that kind of emergency period. And I don't think, to your point, that we're at the end of this, right? Like, the impacts of COVID are going to be felt more and more. We're seeing that in the fuel price increases that are coming our way. And so what that means is we're seeing, from an employee perspective, they're less likely to, one, be able to get to work. If they do get to work and you've got this huge financial burden of stress around you, you're not really concentrating on the job at hand. You're thinking about things like, how do I put food on the table? My kids need school clothes. How do I do that? I want electricity in my shack. It can be as simple as that. Basic necessities that people need in order to live their lives. And that generates the stress. And we see it in the workplace. We know from all of the studies out there, and there are significant numbers now on a global level, this isn't just related to Africa or South Africa, that those under financial stress are more likely to be under some form of physical stress, which manifests itself in terms of us getting sick more often, going to the doctor more often, again, just affecting that productivity within the workplace. So there is a huge impact on employers. And I think, these type of solutions that we are building are there really to support them with their productivity as a business, keeping the economy growing by reducing that employee financial stress.
Yeah, it is social entrepreneurship at its very core, if you think about it. Now, you recently published a new report titled Floatpays State of Employee Wellbeing Barometer. What do South Africans actually have to say about the state of their work environments? Are we happy?
A really interesting study in terms of how we look at the different age groups, different demographics, different parts of the country, and how we kind of view our workplace. Older generations tend to be happier in terms of the workplace offering. Some of that might just be symptomatic of we've always had a poor workplace environment and you've kind of grown up through that. Younger generations, definitely less so, less happy with the kind of the offering and the state of work that they find themselves in at the moment. The study also then went on further to then look at, again, those reasons, what makes an impact on somebody's life at work? What can employers do to help make your life at work better? And obviously financial stress for us was a key ingredient in terms of understanding from the report how we could better help those employees.
And any other interesting findings that you perhaps were surprised by that came out of the report?
I think for the older generation, it seems obvious when you say it, but definitely more indebted in terms of the debt cycle with banks, because at some point they've had some level of financial inclusion. They've got more dependents that are relying on them for support, more likely to have assets which are debt enabled. Younger generations, less so about where they get their money from in terms of the formal lending sector, more about borrowing money from friends, what that looks like. The Mashanisos come in very, very strongly in terms of that segment. It's quick access because they don't have that financial inclusion. They don't have that credit score where they can go to in order to alleviate their financial pressures, which are under play. Other interesting facts. So the last time we ran a proof of impact study, it was about medical needs, COVID obviously being a key requirement. So having support from the employer in terms of supporting loved ones in their time of need from a medical perspective. That's changed around this time. A lot more people going to work. So transport's ridden right up the kind of requirements, if you like, in terms of that. And then also savings, that ability to put money away for a time of emergency. And I think going back to kind of COVID, the pandemic, that's taught us we all need to build up a level of financial resilience that really can support us in that time of emergency. So if that's anything as a positive we can take out of COVID-19, it's take the lesson, take the learning that we weren't prepared to be able to go 3, 4, 5 months without income. Most South Africans prior to COVID had a month and a half of savings, which was that emergency safety net. And so savings as an employee benefit came up significantly.
And I think as an employer, that's the window of opportunity here for you to have a conversation with your employees about what are employee benefits, what are emergency funds, and how can I, as an employer, help you, my employee, be more financially secure and suffer less financial stress, because ultimately that's going to feed back positively into my business with happier, more productive, more engaged employees. The last thing you want is people just sitting at their desks, to your earlier point, not really engaged, and there's this massive presenteeism. And ultimately that's what the country needs, isn't it? We need to see small businesses thrive, don't we, Simon?
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. We need to see the economy thriving. We need to get productivity up within those employers. So how do we help make that a reality, and how do we help the employees on that journey? And it's really interesting in terms of how the products evolve. So when we launched this product, it was about very much, you can almost hear us stomping around, stop the payday lender, stop the payday lender. We were seeing that as the biggest need, if you like. And then as the product developed, we added in financial training, budget planning tools. So you're stopping a payday lender. Now, how do you stop that person getting into that position where they need the kind of the safety blanket on a regular basis? We added in vouchers for things like airtime, electricity. So product features which were really speaking to what the individual was asking for. And most recently, we've been registered as a financial service provider in the country, and we offered an interest-bearing savings account. And in the last few months, the interest from employers specifically and those employees within those groups has gone up significantly, because people are thinking about, how do I protect myself against the future emergency? Because we all know there's going to be something else. So I think the war in Russia just reminded us we're living in unpredictable times, and we need to make sure we protect ourselves and our families.
And you must be sitting on a wealth of data as well that you're going to be able to use to continually evolve and respond to what the needs are in the marketplace. If listeners want to learn more about Floatpays, how can they get in contact with you, apart from coming through me?
Absolutely. They can go to our website. It's www.floatpays.co.za. We're also on LinkedIn. Hit us up. We're also on Facebook. Hit us up. We'll gladly get in touch, discuss the product offering, and see if we can be of assistance.
Simon Ward, founder and CEO of Floatpays, here on Business Talk and Business Tech. Been a great pleasure sharing a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey and the growth of Floatpays, ending those payday lending activities that have really been a blight on the base of the pyramid. I think a real purpose-led business. Thanks for your time.
Amazing. Thank you.